Good morning, everyone. Good to have you here with us. So this session, as you can see, is on water sustainability and food security, addressing the crisis in waiting. My name is Dareen Abu Gaida from Al Jazeera English. I'll be your moderator. I'll introduce my guests in just a moment. If I can get to some housekeeping rules first. So this session is for 60 minutes. And to let you know, it will be aired on Al Jazeera English later this evening at 8:30 p.m. Local Doha time, if anyone would be interested in watching it. But having said that, can I ask you to please put your phones on silent? And also, if you are taking any cameras, make sure that your flash is not on. This is so that the session can be TV friendly. And we're happy that we have a full house. If you do need to leave, we understand, but just try and do it as discreetly as possible so that the cameras don't pick up any sudden movements. So as I'm saying, this is a session on addressing the crisis in waiting. Is it then simply a matter of time before this crisis erupts? If so, what can be done to mitigate the risks, and how vulnerable are we? With a projected global population to more than 9 billion by the year 2050, and with nearly 800 million people right now living in hunger-stricken areas, what's at stake if countries don't ensure food and water security? And how important is increasing the investment in agriculture to help mitigate the risk of mass migration conflict? All these questions I will put to my panelists for discussion, and then we hope to open up the floor to you for any questions that you may have. Microphones will be passed around, but I ask you to please keep your questions brief so we can get in as many as possible. Let me introduce our speakers without further ado. To my left, Ambassador Badr Al-Dafa. He's the Executive Director of the Global Dryland Alliance, whose mission is to work with partners to identify and implement solutions for agricultural, water, and energy challenges of dry land countries in particular. We have next Mr. Jimmy Adoum. He's the Executive Secretary of the Permanent Interstates Committee for Drought Control in the Sahel. And the organization's mandate is to invest in research for food security and the fight against the effects of drought and desertification for a new ecological balance in the Sahel region. We have Minister Pablo Campana. Welcome to you as well. He's Ecuador's Minister of Foreign Trade and Investments. And Mr. Miguel Angel Moratinos, he's the future UN High Representative for the Alliance of Civilizations. That is a political initiative established to explore the roots of polarization between societies and cultures today. Welcome to you all. Lots to talk about. Let's get started right away. Ambassador Badr Al-Dafa, before we get into the correlation between water sustainability and food security, or insecurity that is, give us some context. How would you describe the state of food security today globally?
Good morning, everybody. I think maybe we should define what is food security before we get into the subject of food security. And the interpretation, what it really means is that access to good, nutritious foods at a reasonable price at any time for all members of society. That's what food security is. This is actually a new old subject. Since maybe 3,000 years ago, Holy Books tells us that in Egypt, during the prophet Yusuf or Joseph, when the pharaohs had dreamed of 7 years of drought, or 7 big cows eating 7 cows, that was really the beginning of food security in history of mankind. Since then, the world population has increased. Today, there are 820 million people are suffer from hunger. 1 out of 9 are hungry. Over 22% of people threatened by hunger lives in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm sure you have been watching the news. Last year, over 5,000 migrants have lost their lives at sea while looking for a better living condition. What is coming up is really worse because the world population by 2030 is going to be around 9 billion. The investment in agriculture is lagging behind. I don't want to draw a gloomy picture, but it is a very serious issue. World leaders have really to look into how to deal with the issue of food security.
So what you're saying is that the current world food governance support systems are not enough to mitigate current risks and the risks going forward?
I think the risk is going forward. Although the number of poor significant, well, I don't have the exact number of by how much it was reduced, but this demographic explosion is really making it worse with no clear policies by many countries on how to deal with the food security. I think that is why, although there are many international organizations alarming governments to draw policies for food security, but we are not up there yet.
Okay, Mr. Jimmy Adoum, so the challenges that Ambassador Al-Dafa mentioned are global. He gave us a few grim statistics, that is. We know that countries in the Sahel suffer from food insecurity as a result of droughts as well as other environmental factors. Just give us the point of view as you see it. How vulnerable do countries in the Sahel remain today?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. We'll probably camp the core with respect to, I'm going to give you some numbers, and then we'll get back to what do they mean and whether or not policies currently in place are going to be able to help us overcome the difficulties associated and related to food security and malnutrition. Currently, Africa has 1.2 billion people, and it's supposed to double by 2050. So that's 2.4 billion people. And according to the report cited by Ambassador and currently available statistics, do show that of the 821 million people who are really undergoing severe malnutrition and hunger, 233 of them are from Africa. In other words, roughly 21%. And about 383 million people in Africa live off $1.9 US dollars. That's where basically so if you have $1.9 per day, that's the bare minimum. And so it is currently trailing, just coming after Asia with respect to number of people who are having serious difficulties. Now, these are the gloomy pictures, but there's also the bright side. That is, with respect to a number of these people, can there be anything that can be done? Yes. That creates opportunities. In other words, so if you look at what we have, what we possess in sub-Saharan Africa, and the area from which I come, that is Sahel and West Africa, we irrigate less than 3% of available land. So that means we produce once a year, and if we don't produce 2-3 times a year, we won't be able to produce sufficiently enough to satisfy our basic food consumptive needs, let alone transforming, creating wealth and jobs. All right? We have sufficient land of which we are only actually currently putting in use 20%. The pitch I'm sending out here is that we're moving away from, can government do all of it? No, government cannot do all of it. Are the systems currently in place sufficient to overcome these difficulties? No, because basically, as the ambassador said, food, and nutrition, malnutrition, food security, the 4 pillars which are availability, whether you have it in your granary or you bring it from outside, access, do you produce it, or do you have enough purchasing power to buy it when you need it? The quality of food, is it nutritious enough to be able to get the minimum required so that you satisfy your basic consumptive needs and calorific intake? And with respect to stability, are there enough systems that are stable enough to be able to actually facilitate the movement of goods and services from high-producing areas to low-producing areas so that the markets basically regulate what we have? And so we will get back at some point. We'll discuss at length what is that SILS has been able to do. Yeah, there's not enough food, but there is no disaster. In other words, we put together systems from analysis and discussion and framework and networks that will be able to clearly identify what are the most vulnerable areas, the people, and what needs to be done. Well, we're going to move beyond that, and certainly this platform will give us the opportunity to address those issues at some point.
So would you agree then with the United Nations FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization, which says that despite continuous efforts, the efforts that you speak of governments and partners to address food insecurity and malnutrition in the Sahel, they're saying that there still remains an estimated 29.2 million people who are food insecure. So it sounds like they're saying these efforts are not enough.
The efforts are not enough. I think it boils down to, do we have water to produce? We cannot produce. In the Sahel right now, we produce once a year, 4 months out of 12. And that's not feasible. It's not useful. It's not going to get us anywhere. What we need to do is produce 3 or 4 times or all year round. And that's what I said. We have we are getting less than 3% of available land. So if we wait for rain-fed production systems, we cannot move forward with these issues. So we need to introduce, and luckily there are some investments that are really just beginning. The World Bank has put in sufficient resources, at least to begin an irrigation project for the 6 Sahelian countries, namely Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. The African Development Bank is actually coming right along, and we are in discussion with respect to dealing with this water-related issues. So if we have enough water, and there is water somewhere, we need to pump it, we need to manage it environmentally, sustainably, and what have you, all the requirements that must accompany the investment in water and harvesting technologies, then we produce 3, 4, 5 times a year, and this is critically important. When we produce 3, 4 times a year, we will satisfy our basic consumptive needs, 1. 2, we will transform value added, les chaînes de valeur. And when we do that, we'll be able to create wealth. And when we create the wealth, we're going to create jobs. And these jobs will be able to help us actually deal with the issues, youth running into the boonies, to the woods, engaging in activities that are really creating a lot of havoc related to terrorism, banditry, and what have you. It is just a matter of saying, okay, enough is enough. If we don't create those opportunities, people are frustrated, people are hungry, people are poor, and this is not sustainable, because nowadays, if there are youth in this room, or all of us with our cell phones, we can communicate much faster at a much lighter rate than it used to be, and information actually goes around.
Okay.
And this is a critical issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adoum. Minister Campana, do the challenges require common solutions as well as shared responsibilities? Is it a one-size-fits-all? I mean, does the solution here lie with food producing and export countries like Ecuador, for example, who is a key actor in the global trade and the setting of food prices?
Well, I'm going to do it in Spanish. If you can follow me in Channel 3, I really appreciate it.
Please go ahead.
Muy buenos días con todos. Es un honor compartir este panel con todos ustedes y compartir el día de mi cumpleaños, el día de hoy acá en Doha, en Qatar, lo cual siempre es un gusto. Gracias.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Bien lo decía nuestro amigo Bader Omar Aldafa, 1/9 de la población mundial sufre de desnutrición. Eso equivale a 821 millones de habitantes. Ya lo ha dicho también la FAO y la UNCTAD, que mientras más subsidios se otorga al sector productivo alimenticio de los países desarrollados, más problemas vamos a tener los países en vías de desarrollo para ser competitivos y para lograr ese justo precio a los sectores productivos, especialmente al pequeño productor. Es por eso que los organismos internacionales tienen que continuar apoyando y favoreciendo políticas públicas internacionales que sean en favor de la seguridad alimentaria, que sean en favor de la forestación, en contra de la desforestación. En el caso del Ecuador, tenemos uno de los principales bosques primarios y pulmones de América, me refiero a la Amazonía. Hemos sacrificado la exploración y explotación petrolera y minera por salvaguardar nuestros bosques primarios. Para nosotros es parte de la Constitución el proteger y respetar estrictas leyes ambientales que tenemos en el Ecuador. Y algo importante que es bueno que lo conozcan, una de las razones por la cual estamos aquí en Qatar, en el Medio Oriente, es porque buscamos socios estratégicos en donde encontramos economías complementarias. Fíjense, en el Ecuador tenemos excedentes de producción agrícola. Parte de la producción agrícola se desperdicia por falta de mercados. ¿Cómo qué productos? Lácteos, leche, maíz, papa, arroz, que se desperdicia por falta de mercados. En cambio, en otras partes del mundo vemos un déficit, una falta de productos alimenticios. Es ahí donde tenemos que trabajar cada vez más en equipo, integrados, mancomunados, en equipo, en beneficio de nuestros pueblos. Por lo tanto, Ecuador está en la constante búsqueda de aliados estratégicos para compartir experiencias y exportar sus productos y de esa forma combatir con esta desnutrición que tanto afecta a la población mundial. Gracias.
Mr. Moratinos, what we now see, especially with the migration to Europe of refugees and migrants, that there is a direct link between poverty and food insecurity. It's really a driving force behind some of the migration that we see. These migrants heading to Europe. Talk to us about Europe's role. Does it play an enough active role in supporting the poor and hungry that are coming from dryland countries?
Well, let me first express my gratitude to be invited to this forum. For me, to be back in Doha, in Qatar, is to be back at home, and to be back in such a panel of today to talk about food security and water sustainability is also to be back in my professional involvement. I was here working with my dear friend, Ambassador Dafa, during 1.5 years, trying to identify the way we could work together in order to address this issue of food security. So before I answer your question about immigration, but migration will give me some cue what I'm going to say. Well, I don't complain. We have a good audience today. But we compare with the plenary, still we are in our making to address the vital interests of food security and water sustainability. What I want to say, the old diplomacy, the traditional diplomacy, I belong to that, of course has been addressing the traditional agenda of territorial dispute, war and peace, conflict, neglecting what at today's agenda is much more important. Today, food security, water scarcity, what we can call the new sustainability agenda, that had been approved by the whole international community in 2015 shows the way what are the real root causes of the problems. If there has been a war in Syria, there is many factors, but one of the reasons was the certification and lack of food security. If there is migration, as you say, it's because there is the root causes that people are starving, as our friend from Chad has described. There are poverty, there are hunger. So the new transitional phase that the UN is taking shape now, the new way to address the international agenda today should conduct us to put food security and these 17 goals of the SDG at the top priority of international relationship. So to discuss today here in Doha how we should address this issue is absolutely essential. So just to go to the subject and answering your question about migration. What can we be happy? What is going on? Can we accept that every year our friends in Rome, in FAO, read a paper, very serious, looking to the journalists? Well, we have to acknowledge that during the last 6 years, every year we have to announce, unfortunately, that there are more people suffering hunger. Can we accept that? It's a total failure of FAO, a total failure of international systems that are addressing the food security. And politicians, I will say the decision-making leaders that have to address this issue at the national level, regional level, at international level, have to wake up and say enough is enough.
So what is the role then that you would like European countries to take?
There are three main elements we should address. Number one is a political will. And I think, can agree everybody is in favor of eradicating hunger. No more hunger in the world. That will be the first priority. Every morning, waking up the leaders, myself, citizen, looking to the glass, to the mirror, they say, can we accept that today still there are 890? You say, well, we are lower than 1 million. Well, it's okay. It's unacceptable in the 21st century. So political will. I think political will has been introduced in the new agenda of Secretary General Antonio Guterres, approved by all of us in New York. Number two, institutional reform. I think FAO have to be totally revisited. FAO is a total failure. FAO has not complied with his mandate. FAO have to declare why, if the organization have to support countries to promote agricultural policy and to avoid hunger, every year is incapable in today's world to announce and to prevent this catastrophe. Number three, technological progress. I'm not sure that we are able today, with new technology, new discovery, how we can use water. We have to make the link between food and water. And finally, finance. So you need finance. How we finance that? Oxfam is saying that eradicating hunger in the world need at least 10 billion euros or dollars per year. You don't think that there is enough wealth in the world to put, some innovative mechanism to solve this problem? I'm sure that it. If that is the case, I end my first intervention at responding to your element of migration. Of course, you are absolutely right. What is the main cause for people living in the Sahel, for people living in the West Africa coast, from people living in North Africa to try to sacrifice their lives to go to so-called El Dorado in Europe, to cross the Mediterranean Sea? Is because they are suffering. There is a lack of hope, a lack of dignity, a lack of economic prosperity. And that is one of the reasons that make people to migrate. So instead of putting fences, instead of putting walls, instead of increasing patrols and security guards, let's help the countries to invest in agriculture and to produce good work.
Ambassador Dafa, there's a lot of talk here about international cooperation that's needed, and your organization, the Global Dryland Alliance, aims to establish a network among countries who are suffering from the same challenges. But let me move this discussion along to focus now on water sustainability and water scarcity. So, in your opinion, how key is policy development when it comes to water scarcity? Is there the political will on the behalf of governments to tackle this issue, from what you've seen?
Actually, before I get into this, I would like to say, reply into what Minister Moratinos have said, and I do fully agree with his current analysis of the world today. But I think Europe also could play an important role rather than let these migrants cross the Mediterranean to go to Europe. It will be cheaper for Europe to invest in these countries, because once these immigrants are integrated in system in Spain or France or in Germany, the investment is high. Maybe it could cost less than 20% if they will support these individuals, create a job for them in their own country, and let them rely on themselves rather than feed them fish, teach them how to fish. I think that is really an important element, although it has started a bit by some European country, but we really need to see this at a larger scale. Now, when it comes to water, all civilizations were flourished because they have plenty of water, especially those that along rivers. The source of water in dryland country really comes from rain, but with the climate change, desertification, these countries have to find, I think, as also Minister Jami have said, in sub-Saharan and Sahel countries, main issue is water. Water is really life for any community. The better off countries, they are able, for example, when we talk about Gulf countries, 98% of our water come from the sea, from the desalination process. And technology today also plays a very important role in improving the quality of water. But also there are countries that, I mean, I will take the example of Singapore and the state of California, Orange County in state of California, where they transfer what they call the gray water into drinking water. That could only happen with technology, but technology at a high price that is not affordable to less developed countries. Unless the international community really take this issue seriously, we are going to see some problems. Even it would lead to wars over water if some countries do not have the access to fresh water in the future.
Which is something that I think we are beginning to see now. There are water wars between India and Pakistan, for example. We know it's being fought over in the Middle East. Mr. Jimmy Adume, so Ambassador Dafa was giving us the statistics from the Gulf region. The UN is saying that the world water supply will fall short by at least 40%. That's by the year 2030. That is a very grim statistic. What's at stake for countries in the Sahel region?
Well, you know, if we green the space will increase the likelihood of creating more water. We're going to pump some water, we're going to green it up, and then this ground that will be covered will generate some moisture. But let me put a plug in with respect to water and in our neck of the wood. You know, there are water harvesting technologies, there are drought-resistant crops, there are all kinds of technologies readily available right now. And we also have the know-how. We in SILS area, the ECOWAS and the UMA and the likes, in the 17 countries in that region, we do have the science and we do have the knowledge. We brought degraded land into productive areas and what have you, and we know how to do that. What is left is investment, and we also do know what to do with respect to water. So we need investments to be able to bring, as I said earlier, we only irrigate less than 3% of available land. We actually domesticated, if such a word could be used in this context, 20% of arable land in our area. So if we do that, we will be able to definitely produce, transform, process, create wealth and jobs, and stop those kids who go to Europe. They can stay in the villages and what have you because they are educated. They come out of school at a minimum 100,000 graduate with at least bachelors from each of those countries. And there is an opportunity because they are an educated force to be reckoned with. And if we do indeed provide the training and the technological know-how, we should be able to actually create happier environments and avoid those kids letting them go and drop into it. So in other words, private sector as well. There are a lot of opportunities in that area. And we have not pumped enough water yet. We have plenty of water. So because we have not irrigated, right now we cannot say, holy smokes, we cannot go crazy yet. But if we get these technologies actually rolled out, and we do bring everybody together at the table with our engineers, sociologists, and imams, and priests, and what have you together, we will be able to do something a lot more useful. And the time is now, because those kids are not going to wait, and if we don't do anything, it's going to be increasingly difficult to manage if folks begin to walk on the street.
Minister Campana, in Ecuador, water is enshrined in the Constitution, isn't it, as a human right, but there is still great inequality of access. How much is the issue of the scarcity of water or the potential of the scarcity of water at the forefront of people's minds there? And is it driving political change in your region as a whole?
Uno de los problemas que hemos visto en el Ecuador es que en los últimos 50 años se ha reducido el 20% de los glaciares que tenemos. Montañas muy conocidas como el Cayambe, el Cotopaxi, el Chimborazo han perdido una cantidad de nieve importante, que es fuente muy, muy importante para el agua, la producción de agua para los ríos. Yo quiero recordarles que Ecuador es el país más megadiverso, biodiverso por kilómetro cuadrado del mundo, y para nosotros es importante protegerlo. Por eso hemos tomado iniciativas de políticas públicas para proteger al medio ambiente. Una de ellas, por ejemplo, actualmente, el Ecuador tiene el 90% de su energía que proviene de fuentes renovables, como 7 hidroeléctricas, tenemos fuentes eólicas, que están dando muy buenos resultados y seguimos en esa vía. Queremos incentivar a que se produzca más el agro ecuatoriano. Y eso es una alternativa importante en Latinoamérica. En el Ecuador, 1/3 de las áreas productivas está siendo producida actualmente. Hay mucha oportunidad, pero tenemos que atraer FDI, inversión extranjera, para seguir desarrollando nuestros campos agrícolas, principalmente porque el agro es uno de los sectores que más fuente de empleo genera. Y eso es bueno para que no haya tanta migración hacia otras ciudades o países. Yo creo que aquí un mensaje que quiero dejar es: tenemos que trabajar con los organismos multilaterales. Los multilaterales tienen que ser quienes fomenten políticas públicas e integren a los países, mucho más que los acuerdos bilaterales, que a veces poco o nada de resultados se han dado en los últimos tiempos en términos de proteger el medio ambiente, en términos de fortalecer políticas en favor de la seguridad alimenticia a nivel internacional. Tenemos que seguir fomentando, todos los que estamos aquí presentes, levantando la voz para que los multilaterales sean quienes lideren este tema. Para nosotros es importante mantener las fuentes de agua en el Ecuador. Sabemos que va a ser uno de los recursos muy importantes a futuro, más que el oro actualmente. El agua va a ser uno de los recursos más preciados de la ciudadanía y tenemos que cuidarla todos y todas. Muchas gracias.
Mr. Mauritanos, how big a threat, in your opinion, is water scarcity and the lack of water resource management to global security? And if this is indeed a global problem, which it very much sounds like it is, where does the responsibility lie to take it on?
Well, when I think we are advancing in a new concept. It's a paradox. We are living in what we call a consuming society. People want more, 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 more. And the solution of this challenge of food security, water sustainability, if we use the good acronym, is a few. I mean, it's food, energy, and water. So this nexus of food, energy, and water demonstrate that in order to get food, you need water and energy. So in relation with water, as my predecessors in the panel have pointed out, I mean, only 2.5 of the whole surface of the Earth is water. So there is a scarcity of water. Water is very badly distributed. 80% of the water belongs to 10 countries out of 193. Only Russia, China, United States, Canada, Peru, Colombia, maybe Ecuador, well, have this capacity to really have a high reserve on water. The distribution with certain, the way a European citizens spend 300 liters per day, and the poor guy in Gaza, they have only 50 liters. So there is an inequality in the way you have access to water and water consumption. But also the type of consumer, what kind of food. 80% of water is, 70% of water, is dedicated to agriculture. 20% for industry, and 8% for consuming basis. So you have to change this way to handle the water scarcity. The way you also have to consume. In order to produce 1 kilo of wheat, you need 1,100 liters of water. If you want to produce 1 kilo of egg, you need 5,000 liters of water. If you want to really produce cheese, it's the same, or a kilo of meat. So the way you consume the diet of yourself have to be changed in accordance with the need and capacity of the reserve. And the reserve are, as you say in your introduction, are getting quite serious in a very dramatic way. In 1950, practically the year I was born in 1951, well, the reserve of water was 16,800 liters per year per citizen. Today, in 2014, it was 6,800, and it's forecast that in 2025 it will be only 4,000. So the reservoir, the Earth reservoir on water is decreasing. So what to do? Well, I think we have to use this nexus. As we have said, the technology can be applied. There is not a fatality on that. I'm convinced, I'm fully convinced that I know that in the Gulf and other areas they are making tremendous research in order to have these desalination plants to be possible, and that maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow we will have the possibility to use the ocean water in order to irrigate some part of the internal lands. That is what the GDLA, the Global Dry Alliance, was trying to do. That was one of the objectives, and I think Qatar government and Ambassador Al-Dafa is working is to prove that there is a way to improve the research, the development, and find solution, combining, as I say, energy, water, in order to produce food.
Okay, thank you very much. For the sake of time, let's get in some questions. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists? Please, can the microphone be handed over to the gentleman in the second row? Just introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and who your question is addressed to.
Yes, of course. My name is Carson Smith. I'm with the War and Peace Fellows at Dartmouth College back in the United States. And I wanted to focus on these desalination plants, particularly as they pertain to this region and their importance to this region. And going forward, it would seem that water would prove an incredibly attractive military target for those wishing to wreak havoc in the region. And my question is, because of the region's growing dependence on desalination plants, how big of a threat do you think terrorism or other attacks on these desalination plants pose, and how do you think the best way to address that threat is going forward?
All right, thank you very much. Who would like to address this? Ambassador Badr?
I lived in the United States for 5 years as ambassador of Qatar, and this terminology of fighting terrorism really came after September 11th, and now it's been adopted by the whole world. I don't think a wise or a reasonable terrorist, per answering your question, would try to have an effect or damage into this desalination plant, because he will hurt himself or his family or his community or his society. But also, on the other hand, I am sure 100% that some of the countries in the region have taken this security risk, and they are doing their best to protect these desalination plants. Thank you.
Yes, this gentleman in the third row. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Yannis Ikonomou. I'm the Associate Dean at Texas A&M University at Qatar. I would like to ask the panel, what is the role of multinational corporation in developing the appropriate food and water resources, especially in third world country, and especially in the sub-Saharan or other regions around the world?
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I think it should be and could be a very good answer. I mean, there is this kind of conspiracy theory about multinational companies that they don't want to have food security. I disagree totally. They want for their own benefit, that's for sure. It's part of the game. The question that I think it has been no real serious dialogue and engagement of multilateral or regional organization with this multinational compact. I think if you get involved with them and you try to identify the way they could even increase their benefit, but at the same time giving some kind of sovereignty to the countries and to the local communities, they will understand the need to work together. Today's world is a totally different world, my friend. Today's world is not a state-nation world. Today's world cannot be only a multinational company's world. Today's world needs everybody on board. We need a state-nation. We need private sector. we need civil society, we need media, we need everybody working to the same objective, to make life possible. So sooner or later, we should engage in engaging with multinational companies and explaining to them that we need them because they have the technology, they have the financial resources, and they can make profit. But they can make profit within certain, let's say, parameters, and we should try to work with that. It's not going to be an easy issue, it's not going to be at the immediate result, but we should try to engage with them in this new way to approach the issues.
Mr. Jimmy, go ahead. Give us your point of view.
Thank you. Just one example. You know, in Sahel and West Africa, either it rains a lot and it causes a lot of damages, or it doesn't rain enough, so we get into some serious issues with respect to growth and development of the crop cycles. So if a multinational has the technology in systems, design and engineering, and where it rains a lot, we can actually design water catchment technologies and use that water to crop 2 or 3 times after the rainy season is over. So basically, there's money to be made, and there's opportunities, plenty of opportunities to render some land cultivable so that we can really increase the likelihood of producing, transforming, and creating jobs. So yeah, that's where investment is needed, that's where science is needed, that's where technology is needed. So it's an open field. Please come on over there.
Minister Campana, please weigh in.
Sí, muchas gracias. Quisiera acotar algo adicional. Mucho se habla en los distintos países de los cambios de la matriz productiva. Y tenemos que hacer un sinceramiento casa adentro de en qué sectores tenemos ventajas competitivas y ventajas comparativas, en dónde podemos ser realmente competitivos. Hago un ejemplo. En países donde tenemos excedente de agua, en países donde tenemos fortaleza en exportación de productos agrícolas, de acuacultura y pesca, definitivamente que tenemos que enfocar políticas públicas para aquellos sectores priorizados, para atraer inversiones, que es una necesidad en los países latinoamericanos, por ejemplo. El FDI es muy importante para el desarrollo de los países. Por otro lado, ser pragmático. Tenemos que ser muy pragmáticos y evaluar qué es lo que tenemos, qué fortalezas tenemos y qué es lo que tiene la contraparte. Yo veo muchas veces que nos lanzamos mucho tiempo en negociaciones como los FTA, los acuerdos comerciales abiertos, tratados de libre comercio, que pueden ser muy importantes y de hecho somos partidarios en Ecuador de los acuerdos de libre comercio, pero perdemos muchísimo tiempo en una negociación. Entre países desarrollados puede tomar entre 8 a 10 años una negociación cuando hay necesidades importantes. Yo creo que tenemos que ser mucho más pragmáticos y desde los organismos internacionales como la OMC, inculcar, incentivar herramientas para que podamos acceder a productos de otros países con mejor calidad y a menor costo, lo cual termina favoreciendo a la ciudadanía en general. Gracias.
Thank you. Yes, this lady. I can perhaps squeeze in 1 or 2 more questions. This lady, yes.
Thank you. My name is Melika Belero Anthony from the Nanyang Technological University of Singapore. I appreciate very much the nexus that Mr. Moratinos, thank you.
Moratinos.
At least for countries, as mentioned, water is really life. But there are many countries that have to share water resources. And the moderator alluded to, the possibility of water wars and all that, although there is a study that says there's more cooperation than war. But in light of the changing climate, I was wondering, given the regional representation of the panel, what do you think about cooperation when it comes to sharing water resources, and the future of that, given that water, particularly when it comes to when it's being shared, is actually seen more as a natural national resource rather than something that is shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to answer that? Okay, Mr. Moratinos, go ahead, and then Ambassador Deffer. But please keep your answers a little bit short. We're coming to the end of the session.
I really appreciate your question, and I think should be one element that give the importance and the potential of water and food energy cooperation. I will put a concrete example. How the European Union was created. During centuries, the Europeans were fighting each other. Wars, destruction, 2 world wars, and finally they agreed. And they agreed in the areas where they were competing. There was the steel and coal that was divided themselves, trying to be better than the other, and looking for new markets. And they decided to put together coal and steel, a high authority, to share the way to produce and to export and to benefit. So my dear friends, here in the Gulf or in other areas in Africa, when you have this conflict, most of them due to water, in the Middle East, well, Israeli-Palestinian issue, or all kind of Lebanon and Syria, well, the water, the hydro-diplomacy, now it's a hydro-diplomacy, there is a diplomacy for water, have to be addressed in that spirit. I have a proposal. I mean, if you have a conflict, if you have a crisis, why you don't put things that can unify, that can make people live together? Instead of having, controversies or, conflict, why you don't put water, energy, and food together? For the Gulf even. It will be the best platform. A high authority in the GCC, I don't know, I know this now is very sensitive for the whole situation, but why instead of conflicting themselves, we don't put and work together? It will solve many problems. It will create an atmosphere.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Deffer, I know you want to get in there. Just in 30 seconds so that we can get one more question in.
Sure. I think sharing water is a very important issue, but there are no free lunches. This is the reality today, whether it is water or food. What happened in 2008, food crisis, we saw some big producers have stopped providing consumers in some countries with food. Translating that into food is also today is used as a pressure, a card that the producers used against less developed countries. This is really the reality we are living in today, so let alone sharing water. Thank you.
Okay, this gentleman in the first row.
Saif Al-Hajri, I would like to move to other angle of the challenges, which is the waste happen to water and food. And I believe here we have to focus on education and values of the new generation, because the food is available really for everyone in this world. But we are throwing maybe 30% of what we have it ends with the garbage. So I need to hear from you and from your experience in this field, how also, beside what we hear, how we solve a problem of not wasting what we are producing. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is about food waste, if I understood you correctly. How do we solve that problem? Minister Campana, go ahead, yes.
Sí, es una excelente pregunta. Como les decía en mi intervención inicial, habemos países que tenemos excedentes de producción y el problema que tenemos es falta de mercado local como mercados internacionales. Y pongo un ejemplo, en el caso del Ecuador, un país bendecido que lo tiene todo, con 17 millones de habitantes, económicamente activos, 8.300.000 habitantes, y tenemos productores en el sector agropecuario, 2 millones. 2 millones para 8.300.000 habitantes de mercado, ¿qué significa? Pobreza. Por eso es que las políticas públicas del gobierno nacional, en este caso liderado por el señor presidente Lenín Moreno, es integrarse al mundo, más acuerdos comerciales, recuperar tiempo perdido en la falta de acuerdos comerciales para poder exportar y encontrar mercados, porque no es posible cuando vemos en otros países del mundo que vemos que tienen problemas de seguridad alimentaria, nosotros tenemos excedentes y hemos perdido mucho tiempo y no hemos estado colocando esos productos. ¿Cuál es la prioridad ahora? ¿Cuál es la prioridad? Apertura comercial, lograr nuevos mercados. ¿Para qué? Para generar más fuentes de empleo. Con eso logras combatir la migración, combatir la inseguridad también de los pueblos. Es ahí donde tenemos que enfocarnos y qué mejor si hacemos alianzas estratégicas en donde Ecuador puede importar los productos, bienes y servicios que otros países en el mundo lo hacen de una manera competitiva. Por ejemplo, vehículos, por ejemplo, derivados de petróleo, por ejemplo, temas relacionados a medicina que estamos importando de otros países. Pero nosotros tenemos que fortalecer nuestras exportaciones para cubrir necesidades internas y satisfacer también al mercado mundial, en este caso puntual, de agricultura, acuacultura y pesca. Y no forzar en aquellas líneas donde vemos que no somos competitivos. Sigamos trabajando en lo que somos buenos. Hay países, como, y con esto cierro, como Nueva Zelanda. Nueva Zelanda ha sido un productor agropecuario y se ha profesionalizado y se caracteriza en ser el mejor productor agropecuario y no ha tenido que migrar a cambio de matriz productiva, sino fortalecer el core, en este caso, pues, productos agropecuarios, y ese es el tema que estamos trabajando actualmente. Buscar eficiencias y buscar ser y lograr ser el mejor, excelencia en cuanto a la producción de productos alimenticios para exportación. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're just coming to the end of the session. I just want final thoughts from each of my panelists in 30 seconds each, if you can. The bottom line, Ambassador Dafa, if there aren't enough substantial global and agricultural changes from now until that year of 2050, when that population is really going to rise dramatically, what will happen?
Well, I think we should really have a global awareness about the strong linkage between food security, peace, and peace in the world. In well-off societies, sometimes we think $1 is a small amount, but $1 in one of these poor countries could bring 3 meals a day for a poor person. What I'm saying here is that we have to always remember that there are hungry people somewhere. Their number actually is also in the increase, and we have to donate as individual, as society, as whoever can donate something. I think they should do in order to bring peace and stability to the world.
Mr. Jimmy Adum, your final thoughts?
Create opportunities for investments in water production systems, transform, create wealth and jobs, and there will be a place for everyone.
Thank you very much. Minister Campana, final thoughts from you.
Mi mensaje final sería, el mundo entero tiene que valorar la protección de bosques primarios, la protección de fuentes hídricas. Es algo que debemos trabajar y evaluar bien si es que los famosos bonos por certificados de carbono realmente han funcionado o no. Creo que va por el tema de evaluar y valorar lo que tenemos y protegerlos para futuras generaciones. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moratinos. Go
Well,
ahead.
I will end with a quotation of my friend, former president of Israel, Shimon Peres, saying that there has no sense to fight for water when we can't create it. There is no sense to fight for our land when we can't fertilize it and not enter in a war. Technology is the better alternative to war.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll leave it there. We thank you very much. I thank all of my panelists for joining us today. Great discussion. Thank you to the audience for joining us as well. It was good to have you with us. And thank you very much for watching this special edition of Inside Story from the Doha Forum. Bye-bye for now.